everyone, it's me Lois with Aussie Lassie Knit Designs, and this is Knit Bits. We are still in our series about gauge, and today what we're going to do is look at some patterns. So I've already loaded the patterns and I've looked at them very briefly. These are not patterns that I have personally knit, and I seriously just went into Ravelry and I put free patterns and picked a hat and two sweaters. The hat's knit in the round, one of the sweaters is knit in the round, and the other sweater is knit flat. So I wanted us to get a good variety of different things. One has color work, one has drop stitches, and the other is just kind of a straightforward looking knit from what I could see. So this is the Late to the Party hat by Fleece, Love and Happiness, which you can see on the screen now. And it's a really cute Fair Isle type knit, stranded color work. It's got a ribbed brim. It has my favorite, the Latvian braid, and it's really cute. I think it's really cute. I just saw it there and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, super cute. And then she talks about the pattern, or they talk about the pattern. I don't know anything. I don't even know anything about this company. I just found them and was like, this will work. Okay, now let me adjust my screen so we can zoom in on the pattern. And then seven stitches per inch. That's interesting. That's really interesting to have a gauge written like that. So here's what I'm going to read into what was just said. I'm going to say that this is knit in the round, obviously, and that you have to use size 3 needles, and that you're going to be working just straight from the chart. And I'm going to assume that row height doesn't matter because he didn't even mention it like at all. However, the pictures tell me that row height is very important because it looks like a fitted hat. And I'm not sure, like, yeah, so we're just going to dive in and see what we can come up with here. All right, so if I was going to do a gauge swatch for this pattern and I was new to the Latvian braid and stranded color work, then and also the decrease looks really interesting on this. I have to get really close. All right. So you're going to want to knit this gauge swatch in the round, obviously. And if you're new to the Latvian braid and you're new to the to stranded color work and you're new to the SSK, these are all things that you can be testing in your knit. Now it says that it gets 7 stitches per inch. And so if I was going to knit a gauge swatch, I would do at least a cast on of 28 stitches, which you can practice the cast on if they call for a specific one. I don't see that they are calling for a specific cast on, so just cast on however you want. Yeah, so the chart itself is 24 stitches. That is so close to being a 4-inch gauge swatch that if I wanted to make a smaller swatch because it's just a hat and I don't want to be spending a lot of time, I might just knit one chart, which is 24 stitches, and that should give me almost 4 inches. Like I'd bring up my calculator and figure out what that would be. So if 28 is 4, that should give me about 3.5 inches. It's a small gauge swatch. Because I'm a big gauge swatch person, I would actually say to do 2 charts, and that would give me 6 inches, which is so much easier to measure too, right? Because it's not about 3.5 inches, it is 6 inches. So if you worked 2 of these charts, and I would recommend that because it's a pretty involved chart. Like, it's not the most complex, but there's a lot happening here. There's different colors, there's stranded color work in the Latvian braid. You can practice all of those elements, and you can even practice the SSKs to close up the swatch. And I think that's a good idea to do as well, because this is where you're tweaking things. This is when you can look at your SSKs and say, is that looking like what I saw in the picture? What am I doing that maybe isn't correct? And you can make all those adjustments before you knit the hat for real. So yeah, so that's what I would do. I would either cast on the 24 stitches that is in the chart, or I would cast on double of that. And then I would knit this in the round for the swatch. Definitely knit it in the round. And they don't say that the knitting is blocked when you swatch. Let's see, it's a wool yarn. Block it. I would definitely block it before I measured. This is by Retro Claude. I've never knit this pattern before. I don't know anything about this maker, except for that. Like, how cute is this? 9 stitches to 4 inches and 12 rows to 4 inches, or 10 centimeters. So that means 9 by 12 is your 4 by 4 inch or 10 by 10 centimeter square gauge. Okay. And this was nice because in the materials section and their recommendations. So you can use whatever you want, but they're recommending that you use circular needle. And so that's really helpful. I like that. Oh, and they also are letting you know that the garment becomes very heavy. That the gauge is made in stockinette stitch, but I'm going to assume that it is, because stockinette stitch makes up the bulk of this pattern. It is knit in the round, and so what I would do is just cast on, let's see, 9 stitches equals 4. That's so easy, guys. You could just cast on, say, 18 stitches, work magic loop if that's your thing. It is for me. And that way you can use the same circular needles that you would be, and just do stockinette stitch, and then block it and measure it. And the thing about doing 18 stitches, if you block it and lay it flat and measure, then it should be 4 inches, basically. And yeah, and then I would also work, I do mostly the stockinette for the measuring for the gauge swatch, but then I would actually practice doing the open, long, what do they call it? Commence open, yes, commence open work. So I would practice a couple rounds of that too, just to get the practice in. Yeah. And then I might also do a little bit of the ribbing just to see how the yarn I'm working with responds to the ribbing. So this is the Verde cardigan by Unit. Well, no, it's by Claudia Q. And Unit is the company. So Claudia Q is the designer of this very, 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 very cute kid sweater, which I just love. It's so adorable. Okay, so it is knit flat and in the round. Interesting. 10. All right, so then we've got the gauge here, and it says that the gauge is 22 stitches and 30 rows equals 4 inches or 10 centimeters in stockinette stitch on 3.5 US 4 needles blocked. Excellent. This is such a good pattern. That gives us the information we need. The only question I would have is that round or flat, but we're just going to read through the pattern and decide if we want to knit that round or flat. So since our gauge is 22 stitches and 30 rows equals a 4 by 4 or 10 by 10 square, 4 by 4 inch, 10 by 10 centimeter square, then what I would do, because I like big gauge swatches, is I would just cast on 44 stitches flat and knit that in straight stockinette stitch. And then when I reached 8 inches tall, I would bind off, and then I would measure it after blocking. And it should be 8 inches square, hopefully, fingers crossed. And then I would go back and count the rows to see if I had it should be 60 rows. If you want to do smaller, you could do 33 stitch cast on. That would give you a 6-inch square, but still give you more than just a 4x4. But there are people who literally just do like 4x4 gauge swatches. You know what? You're the knitter. You get to decide. So if that's what you want to do, you just cast on 22 and do that 4-inch square. You've just made a coaster, guys. Don't throw away your swatches. Use them. That's why I'm saying use them, use them, use them. Okay, there was one other thing that I wanted to look at with this pattern. Well, the row height kind of really matters for this pattern. That's what I was trying to look at. And you can look with me. Sorry, I left you on that picture. But yeah, so within this pattern, the row height matters. And I know that the row height matters because they're telling me how many rows to work before I increase or decrease. They're telling me how many rows to work before I get to another section. So you want to pay attention to your row gauge for this pattern. And that's what I was trying to find. All right, guys, thanks. If you enjoyed this video, would you please hit like, share, and subscribe? Also, I do have in my Learn to Knit resource kit a whole section on how to calculate to make a gauge swatch and instructions on how to measure that if you want something that is, you know, a PDF that you can refer to more quickly than watching this video. I will put links to each of these patterns under the video because they're really cute and you might want to knit them now that you've seen them. I kind of do, especially that sweater for the little kids and the grown-up one. Okay, I'll share the links. Anyway, please subscribe to my channel. I promise not to keep rambling forever. Bye-bye.